Welcome, everyone, to It's a Wrap with Rap. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. This podcast features people who have overcome life's challenges and adversities, people who can inspire and motivate, and people who can educate us on an assortment of topics. My guest today is Jennifer Cunningham. She holds a master's degree in counseling, is a certified coach from Coach Training Alliance, has coached hundreds of individuals on career and relationships, and more recently is focusing her work with individuals who have experienced humiliation or public trauma, which may have resulted from harassment, bullying, or something else. Jennifer helps people recover confidence after a humiliating trauma or loss, such as an unexpected job loss, public humiliation, false accusations, defamation, character assassination, or cancel culture. Jennifer's own personal incident of public humiliation is what prompted her to want to help others get back to normal or better than before. Welcome, Jennifer, to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. This will be fun.
Well, yeah, we're glad to have you. Jennifer, we always want to get to know our guests a little better. What was life growing up for you in your pre-work world?
Pretty normal childhood. I grew up in Orange County, California, and that's in Southern California. And
Beautiful
dad
area.
dad was a school teacher, and my mom worked in the aerospace industry, and pretty non-traumatic childhood, and just kind of followed the normal path. Went to high school, went to college, and then started my career. I've kind of shifted around a little bit in the career. Most recently, and probably the bulk of my experience has been in higher education. And I've just recently kind of transitioned out of that, and just exploring my options for the future.
Great. What motivated you to study the fields of counseling, organizational behavior, and conflict management?
Well, I've always been interested in human behavior, and when I got my bachelor's degree in behavioral science, my intention was to go on and get licensed and become a therapist. And then I worked full time through all of my college education and never took out any student loans or anything. So I was always working as I was earning my degrees, and I just decided, I didn't want to take a step back and go through the licensing route. And really, it's just been an interest in how people behave, motivation, spirituality,
Yeah.
and just kind of getting over all of those things. That the conflict management degree kind of came by accident. I was working in a local government, and one of the benefits of my employer was to get to get extended education, and so I took advantage of that and did that. And so I love learning, and I continue to learn.
It sounds like you like to help people too.
Absolutely.
So can you please share with us your personal trauma and humiliation event with us within the confines, of course, of confidentiality and without naming names and places, which seem to be a turning point in your life? What exactly happened?
Yeah, that was the big pivot. So like I said, I was working in higher education, and the bulk of my work has been in career counseling. So I help people, college students with their resume and interviewing and that type of thing. And then I took on a new role, and it was kind of like a disciplinarian kind of role, and was really making some really difficult decisions in that role. And most of the time, people, usually someone wasn't happy with my decision. So, and then in the process of that, I began handling sexual misconduct cases among the student body. And, there was just a group of students who I guess just didn't like the way I was handling things. And, I came to work one day, and there were posters all over the campus asking for my firing and calling me incompetent, and just really hurtful things. And prior to all of this, I had been quite the beloved person on campus. I had a whole lunchbox full of thank you notes from students that I helped. So I kind of went from, from that to being the pariah. And, some people, I guess, maybe could roll with that a little bit better than I did. But, I pride myself, and I one of the things that makes me empathetic is, people that are empathetic are usually sensitive people. So it affected me really deeply. And so that's what happened in a nutshell. And then, through the course of that is how I started the business and all of that.
Well, that being said, I mean, you really couldn't defend yourself, could you? Because you were probably doing conflict management, I would assume. And it'd be pretty hard, since everything's confidential with that, if they think you did something wrong, there's really no way you could have come out and told people, hey, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. So, I wasn't able to share any of the details, obviously, with anyone really, except for my boss who knew. And
right.
In unraveling it all, the university that I worked at conducted their own investigation on the work that I did, and I was cleared and exonerated, and they had
Right.
made the decision that I was doing the right thing the right way. um, but there were still, it was a small school that I worked at, and it really kind of developed this cloud that really followed me for a long time. And then, students just didn't trust me and didn't trust the system, so to speak. So it was really challenging. And, I slowly, made my way, muddled through it.
Well, it had to be frustrating. And did you come to the conclusion that if people tell a lie over and over, people start believing it?
Yes, absolutely. And, there's this one quote, the truth, a lie can travel around the world before the truth puts its pants on. And I've always remembered that because, especially now, with social media and text messaging and, instantaneously somebody
Yeah.
can say something and it's out there on Twitter, and, and to really get to the meat of it and to understand the truth, a lot of times you have to really, really dig. And most people don't have that type of time to
Right.
really look
Right.
into an issue.
Right. Especially with the way the media is, people, it's fast and it keeps turning over all the time. What were some of the things that these transgressors were saying about you that caused you so much pain? And how did this event affect your health, your career, doing your job, and even your marriage?
Yeah. Um, they had quoted me as, saying some things that I think any person born after the year 1970 would never say to someone that may have been a target of sexual misconduct. So, I was misquoted as saying all these horrible things, like, one quote was that I had asked a student what she was wearing at the time that, the person
Yeah.
touched her, and I would never ask that. Well, I take that back. There could be a context for that, because if you're asking someone that's been assaulted to describe their clothing, what you may be getting at is, the access
Yeah.
point of that. If someone's wearing a dress versus, tight pants that have to be unzipped, and I'm trying not to be too graphic, but
Yeah.
you can see how that might be a legitimate question. The way you frame that question is very
Sure.
important, that you have to be sensitive to the person that you're asking. So really just, those things. And I think this may be another question that's coming up, but I think one of the beliefs among this group is that my job was to be an advocate for targets of sexual misconduct, and that was not my job. My job was to be an independent, non-biased fact finder, so that I could, just the truth could be discovered, and persons held responsible if they indeed were responsible for violating a policy. So I think a lot of people might have thought that I was supposed to be, an advocate for the person who made the complaint, and that really wasn't my job.
Did they question your ability or your competency to do your job and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely they did. And I think really it was just ignorance on many people's part of not knowing what the job is, what not knowing what the job was about, but the impact of those things was still very damaging and hurtful.
Jennifer, how did this affect your health and your doing your job and your marriage?
Oh my gosh, it was a terrible time. You know, I mentioned on my website that, you know, I like wine. I would normally have a glass of wine at night when I came home from work, and you know, through this thing I
Yeah,
was ruminating so much and trying to de-stress so much that, you know, one glass of wine turned into maybe three a night, and then I wasn't sleeping well, so and then I would show up for work being tired and, you know, not hungover, but definitely not myself.
sure.
And then, you know, in terms of my relationship with my husband, you know, he wanted his wife back. You know, I was just sad all the time, and I was just really I couldn't quite get over it. I, you know, would just think about it all the time, and you know, when I would go to school, I would just want to go in my office and shut the door and not talk to anybody, and you know, my friends too, and my family, and everyone was very good at listening and trying to help me through it. But I think at some point even they got tired of it.
Sure.
They just
Yeah.
wanted me to get over it and get
Yeah.
on you know, with
Yeah.
life,
But it's
which
kind of
was
it's
totally
like
natural.
it's like
Yeah,
PTSD almost.
absolutely, it
It's
really
a
is.
traumatic event.
Yeah, it
It's with
is.
you
And
24/7. It's easy for people to say, "Hey, get over it," but
yeah,
it's you.
yeah.
It's not that
and
easy to get over.
and anything that, you know, was I could be re-triggered very easily
Sure.
by things like whenever I would get a new case, I would be like, oh my gosh, you know, it would pull up all of these things, so it made it difficult. And then in terms of career, you know, what I really wanted at the beginning was just to leave my work environment and get a new job. And I tried a little bit, but what I as I stepped away from it, what I realized that I was just putting off a really bad vibe when I was in interviews, and you know, I was just not the right candidate, because I was still
Yeah.
anxious and not presenting myself in the right way to
Well, you were
people. So
probably walking on eggshells.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I find that with the people that I work with, it really does bleed into those areas quite frequently. One, if not all of those areas are usually impacted.
So, do you have any idea, even now, maybe, what the transgressor's motivation uh, may have been to do this?
It's a great question. You know, I tend to want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but I think maybe just you know, they just thought maybe they were doing the right thing, and maybe it wasn't personal at all. Maybe it was just they wanted to believe that they were being activists, you know, for a victim.
Yeah.
That, you know, that's really all I can imagine. I suppose there may have been, you know, I didn't really know these people, so there may have been one person that maybe I interacted with at some point that just didn't like me and wanted that.
Right.
But I really don't think that's what it was. I don't think anybody was just targeting me to want to make my life, you know, hell or anything. But it was hell for
Yeah.
quite a while.
What scared you the most as to what the worst thing that was going to happen to you from this event?
Well, initially, you know, it crossed my mind that I would be fired from my job. I'd never been fired from any job in my life. Although they say, you know, that if you haven't been fired from a job, then you really haven't, you know, done anything worthy. But I had never been fired, so that was the first thing. Oh my gosh, am I going to lose my job? And then kind of, you know, as I knew that that wasn't an option, I guess the other thing was that once I did start my job search again, would anyone hire me? You know, would
Yeah.
anyone
Yeah.
find this information out? And even though even though it wasn't true, you know, to try to defend yourself against something that's not true is hard. And like you said earlier, you know, I can't tell the details of the people involved or the stories. So, but
Yeah.
but yeah, that's behind me now, thankfully.
Yeah. Thank God. How long did this event last, and what brought it to a conclusion?
The incident itself was, a few months, but when you work in a university, right, each year, there's some students that return to the university, some go on and graduate, but there's always a class that, was from the year before. So, during COVID, I worked from home, and I didn't have any cases to deal with. And then when I returned to work just recently, what I told myself was, okay, so much time has passed since this incident. Um, I, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be, it's going to be a new
Yeah.
set of
Yeah.
students, and I got in front of it. But ironically, the first couple weeks I returned to campus, it kind of reared its ugly head again, and then that's when I just said, I think I need to move on now, and my confidence, at that point or now is a lot better than it was before. So I decided to make that move.
Yeah. Which I'm sure was a good move. After things settled down, what coping mechanisms did you use, and how were you eventually able to heal and let go of the negative aspects of the event? And explain to us about post-traumatic growth.
Mhm. So I did a lot of work. I'd never really been a religious person, but definitely a spiritual person. And, uh, and I would, you know, throughout my early adult and, into my adult life, I always, gravitated towards some spiritual techniques that would help me with situations. But then when things are going good in your life, you kind of, I don't know about you, but you kind of put that stuff on the back burner because, oh, everything's fine. I don't need to do that. So I started back with, meditation and journaling. And then there's this other form of therapy that is super effective called EMDR, and that stands for eye movement desensitization. And I can't remember what the R is for, but EMDR. And
EMDR, got it.
yeah, it was originally developed by a woman to work with, veterans who had come back from war with PTSD. And it's a very quick therapy. It's not, there's a little bit of talk therapy involved, but it sounds kind of woo-woo, but it has to do with the way your eyes, there's a technique where your eyes shift and it triggers brain waves. So anyway, I did EMDR therapy. That helped tremendously. And then I just really, started to kind of get to work on forgiving, the people that I believed wronged me. And then, after I kind of got to a certain point, I thought, okay, I became familiar with this term, post-traumatic growth. And
Yeah.
post-traumatic growth is when people who have gone through traumatic events, many much, much more traumatic than my event, they go on to do something better with it. I think similar to yourself, Ron, where you had an experience and you came out of it and you said, okay, I'm going to turn this around and make something good out of it, where you can
Right.
help other people, perhaps. So that's what I did. And so I thought, okay, I took myself through this experience, and I healed, and I have the background and to help other people who have experienced it. And oh my gosh, when I started researching and doing work, I heard and read about so many people who had, horrible injustices done to them. I mean, nothing compared to mine. And one of the other podcasts I've been on, corrected me, and they said, even though it may not be what you think is traumatic as somebody else's
Right.
experience, it was still your experience. So,
That's what I
there,
was going to
yeah,
say. I mean, I
yeah.
wouldn't minimize your experience because I don't think my experience, sure. I mean, I went through, the male breast cancer thing, and I was fortunate. I caught it early and I didn't have to have the chemo or the radiation like like some of the other men, but you can't compare, apples and oranges. I mean, everybody's experience is their experience. So I wouldn't minimize your experience at all. I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
I agree with that. After letting go, what did you do emotionally to feel better, and what has been the result for your persona?
Yeah, I think some of those things that I mentioned, just meditation and the forgiveness piece is important, not to forgive the person or people, but to open up a space in your own heart where something else can come in. So it's not, when I talk about forgiveness, it's not about washing away what someone did and,
Right.
saying, I forgive you. It's really for yourself
Yeah.
to create an opening where you can replace those feelings with, better, more healthy feelings. So
Yeah. We did
I
a whole
wrote a
we did a
lot.
whole podcast on forgiveness. My
Oh, I
first
bet.
podcast was all about forgiveness. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just simple things too. Like, well, I always tell people, you want to talk about it, you want to write about it, if that makes sense. In fact, I have some of my clients do a forgiveness letter, but they write it from as if they're the person the transgressor, as if they're the transgressor writing back to themselves,
Right.
apologizing. It's a
Right.
very helpful and powerful exercise.
Yeah, we actually had somebody on the podcast a while back, and they were victims of rape, I believe, and they actually went to the grave site of the perpetrator
Oh,
and then
wow.
and read their letters. Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah. So let's shift to the work you're doing to help others right now. What types of people come to you for coaching?
So a variety, but many that have had similar experiences to mine. The name of my business, Reputation Repair Coach, I'm not sure is the most accurate for what I do, because I think a lot of people hear that and they think, oh, PR. They,
Yeah.
somebody got in a bad situation and they need their reputation
Right.
repaired. So, I'm kind of rethinking that a little bit, if that's what I want to stick with.
That's what I thought when I first read it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I get that feedback a lot.
Yeah.
But people who have had maybe been victims of workplace bullying or
Yeah.
harassment, that type of thing, or an unexpected job loss where, they've been going along just fine and then all of a sudden they're fired and they're like, whoa, what happened? And then this cancel culture that is so much a part of our lives now, where you say one thing that's, a little incorrect, or that is not favorable to one group or another, and people just, there's this mob mentality where people just, mob.
Yeah.
And if you've experienced that, that can be a type of client that I would work with as well. But yeah, I've heard many, many stories. I did work with a couple people that were on the other end of being accused of sexual assault and who were fighting that accusation. So that could be a potential client as well.
How is the type of coaching you do different from, say, therapy or counseling?
Mm-hmm. Well, in therapy and counseling, you're looking into your past and your childhood and how those experiences may be affecting you as an adult, which could be, part of why someone comes to coaching. But the technique of coaching is really a kind of future based and active versus past. It's kind of a person that would benefit from coaching would really want to they would want to get in and start solving the problem immediately. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't talk about what happened or talk about some things of a person's past that might come up, but you're not dwelling on that. You're not staying there in the past. You're taking action steps to move forward and to for the person to kind of, get on with things and get on with their life. So it's and that's not appropriate for everybody. Some people really have to go back to, some of those childhood experiences to really get at the root of maybe why it's affecting them so greatly.
Yeah. Now, of all the negative events that can occur, such as defamation, false accusations, bullying, what trends are taking place out there as far as to what event is occurring the most right now? And does social media, is that fueling this? Or can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the cancel culture is really the hot thing right now, where someone just, you can make a statement, maybe something taken out of context, and people just, if it gets spread, we talked a little bit earlier about social media.
Yeah,
You can be, quoted, misquoted, and have your name, plastered all over the internet in a matter of minutes, really.
sure.
And a lot of times without the opportunity to, kind of
Defend yourself.
defend yourself. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I hope it's just a pendulum. I hope it's swinging, in a certain direction, but I hope, and maybe some of these things do need to be called out. I think people have kind of, sometimes you do get away with a little bit too much, and a lot of people do need to be called out on things, but not in the way that it's happening. It's so hurtful when, people just, this mob, and nothing is, everything is just, my way or the highway.
Yeah, it
And
reminds me of the old Western days with the lynch mob. It
yeah,
really does.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, no kidding. And I think the political environment in the last couple of years has probably, made this tougher too for a lot of people, but just exacerbated by social media. And with social media, right, you can kind of hide behind your tweet and your Facebook post, because if you don't know the people that you're speaking to, um, there's a little bit of a barrier there. So I think
Yeah.
people are more daring, and they take more risks in what they say in social media. But again, the impact that it can have on a person's life can be very traumatic.
And it's got to be tough for school kids,
Absolutely.
especially.
Bullying, yes.
Yeah.
The bullying. Well, we've all heard stories, right, where students take their own lives because
Yeah.
they just couldn't escape what was happening to them.
Yeah. And I'm sure what you went through, somebody who wasn't as strong as you or resilient, I'm sure people have taken their lives over it,
Mm-hmm.
especially if
Absolutely.
they're very sensitive and nothing like that's ever happened before. Yeah.
Yeah. I often think of Monica Lewinsky,
Yeah.
and she, 19 years old or 20 years old, and when
Yeah.
she was in the affair with Bill Clinton, and really just was just eaten alive
Yeah.
after that, and she made it through. She really made it through. But I feel for her all the time. There's a movie out called Impeachment that it talks about the whole scandal from her perspective. So I haven't watched that yet, but I intend to.
It still has to be tough for her. I mean, you still hear Monica Lewinsky
Yeah.
jokes all over
Yeah.
the place, and things like
Yeah.
that. What are some stories you have heard of people who have experienced a false accusation or public humiliation? I think our audience would be interested in that.
Yeah, there's this one woman who has a TED Talk about her experience. Her name is Catherine Bosley. You can see her on the TED Talk, but she tells of this experience. She was a newscaster in, I don't know, Ohio or somewhere,
Uh-huh.
and she had just gotten her second cancer-free diagnosis. She had two different types of cancer. Just got notified of her second, um, that she was cancer-free for the second time. And
Yeah.
so she and her husband were down in Florida somewhere, and I think in the Keys, she says, and they walked into this bar. They were there to celebrate and on vacation, and they walked into the bar, and she was just so happy that she had got this great news. And they were having a wet t-shirt contest. And for those of you who don't know, that's when a woman goes up there and they throw water on her t-shirt, and people in the audience judge who has the best looking chest.
There you go.
And so she was there, and they were asking for volunteers, and she was like, I'm going to do this wild thing. I'm down here, nobody knows me, nobody recognizes me. I'm feeling, I want to embrace my femininity again. And
Sure.
she did it. And fast forward about 6 months, she's in her home on Christmas Eve with her entire family there, and she gets a call on her answering machine from someone she's never met before, who says, "Your life is over, you stupid bitch. I have you on film doing this. You're never going to work again in this town, blah, 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 blah."
Oh
And
my
she
God.
was, mortified, right? So she, sure enough, someone had been filming that and recognized her as a newscaster, and they fired her from the news station. And she goes on to explain how she had kind of stockpiled a lot of drugs during her cancer treatment, and there were many times where she was ready to take her
Yeah,
own life,
sure.
but she pulled herself out of it. And but a huge public humiliation for her, that thankfully had a good outcome, but just like a fluke thing, and it affected her so greatly. But yeah, I've heard all kinds of
Yeah,
stories.
what really intrigues me is all the young people running around with cell phones in their hand, taking videos, and they're all over the internet. And somebody's bound to see it,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, interestingly, what she does now, she has become an activist, and she goes around to high schools
Yeah,
and, talks to high school students about this. Like, you do not want to, give your naked photos to your boyfriend, and, because
sure.
it gets out, that stuff gets out there, and it will haunt you.
It's
And,
all
and
over.
it can be so humiliating, again, like,
Yeah,
with young people, especially, that they don't know how to process it and deal with it, and they end up, just taking their own lives.
yeah. And the suicide rate is high now.
Yeah,
It really is. What are some of the mistakes people make going through this?
that's a good question. Part of what I did to get my business going is I interviewed people who had mostly, bullying situations, workplace bullying situations. And what they reported to me is they wish they would have seen it coming. They wish they would have been able to identify what was happening to them in real time before, it culminated in something embarrassing or humiliating. So I don't know that there's any right answer to that, because a lot of times these things just come out of nowhere. You can be going along with your life, and you never see it coming. It's like getting hit by a train. But while you're in it, what you can do is get as much help as you can, get it from anywhere, get it from any
Yeah,
place that will listen, talk about it. Even if your friends and your family get sick of it, you still want to be able to have somebody that you can go to. Of course, go to therapy, journaling, meditation,
right.
uh, being in nature, all of those things can be very good steps
I
to
think
beginning to heal.
what you're saying is don't try to go it alone.
Right,
Okay.
right.
What advice can you give friends or family members of someone who is experiencing this type of trauma?
Try to be patient with the person. Even, a lot of times people aren't looking for an answer from their loved ones. They're just looking for someone to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're able to do that, that can really be helpful to the person. Encourage them to get help from outside of their family and friend circle. Uh, try to, boost their confidence, and help them, you know, process it.
Yeah.
Look for if it's possible to look for a silver lining in something, because sometimes these things happen, and that's what prompts us to want to make a change in our life in a different direction.
Absolutely. What is your success rate of recovery, and what traits do people who recover possess?
Yeah, I don't have, a percentage, and each person comes up with a, different set of issues.
Yeah.
So, but what I can say is, the people that have been my clients, they give testimonials, and they report things that they, got a boost in confidence. They were able to let the situation go. They found the exercises and the techniques that I use to be very effective, things that they can go back to if they have a relapse, because sometimes that's what happens too, is, people will be making progress, and especially like in coaching or therapy, right? And then they hit a brick wall, or they stop the coaching or therapy, and then they regress a little bit.
Yeah.
So I've had it been reported to me by clients that, some of the tools and the exercises that I provided during the coaching, they're able to go back to and redo and revisit, so that, they always have that kind of in their arsenal.
That's good.
Yeah,
Do you have a favorite quote about this topic?
I do. There's a man called, his name is Brian Stevenson,
Uh-huh.
and he is the producer of a film called Just Mercies,
Okay.
or Just Mercy, and it's actually about the prison system. And the quote is, "We're not the worst thing we've ever, or we're not the worst thing we've ever done, or the worst thing that has ever happened to us." And I really like that one because it's so true. We've all done bad things and things we're not proud of in our life, but that shouldn't define us.
Right.
As well as, if you've been an innocent victim of something, you also shouldn't let that define you. There's always the next step. There's always, moving forward. And another quote is Winston Churchill, I think it was, if you're, something about, if you're going through hell, keep going, because if you're going through something, you're gonna get out of it. You just got to keep
Yeah.
pressing on,
Well, you
which is
can't give
easier
up.
said than done. Yeah.
Yeah. If you
Sometimes,
give up, it's over. Yeah.
absolutely.
That's what I always tell people.
Yeah.
Based on your experiences and knowledge, what advice would you give others to help them get through a difficult life challenge? Doesn't necessarily have to be this challenge, but just a difficult life challenge.
Yeah, I think some of the things that we've already mentioned, perseverance, and getting support, and really just recognizing that, it's just life. This stuff
Yeah.
happens. This stuff that, and if you talk to people that have had meaningful lives, or think that they've had meaningful lives at the end of their lives, it hasn't been an easy ride for most people. Most people have overcome challenges, and that's what's made them interesting people, and that's what's you know given them meaning in their life. If you can find some meaning and purpose out of these situations, that's, I think, the best that you can expect. But it's just life. This is the human experience, right? Just
Yeah, it
things
sure
happen,
is.
and you just got to deal with it.
What are your 5 things you need to heal after a dramatic loss or life change? And can you share a story or example if you have one?
So in on my website, there's a little free gift that kind of outlines some tips to get people started on recovery. So,
Mm-hmm.
the first one is obviously talk about it.
Yep.
Find people or a person to talk about it with. But, again, you don't want to stay there too long, because if you stay with your story and you keep repeating it and repeating it, it just sometimes it drags you down. But you do need to be able to share it and get it out. You need to write about the experience, write how it affected you, write a forgiveness letter. You need to try to reframe it. Is there something in this situation that I'm not seeing? Is there potentially something good that's going to come out of this? Sometimes that's a little challenging when you're in the midst of it, but it can be, like many people, can be what, prompts them to do something that they never thought, they could do out of it. And then, one thing that I joke about is seek revenge, and then I, say, of course, that's not serious, but there can be some healing in pretending to, seek revenge. So, for instance, writing a kind of a revenge letter to somebody, what you, how the experience affected you, and what you would like to see happen to them. Of course, you never, want to
Yeah, you don't want to
mail
act
that
it out.
letter. No,
Yeah,
but it can be cathartic
yeah,
in that way. So those are a few tips. In addition to the other really kind of healing things that I've mentioned, whatever that is for you. Some people find healing in being outdoors, or being with animals, or exercising, or being active, or um, reading anything and everything there is on the subject. That can be helpful too. I think it just really depends on personal preference. But there are some of those basic things, like, talking about it and writing about it, that are very helpful.
Do you have any main takeaways for our audience as to how to move forward from an event like this?
Yeah, again, I think just recognizing that we're all on the planet, and um, there's going to be, as I'm speaking, it reminds me of this other book that I read recently called The Art of Not Giving a F. And one of the things that the author talks about is that, when we don't have a problem to solve, we create problems,
Yeah,
because that's what makes us human, is our problem solving ability. And the happiest people are those that can, solve problems easier. But a lot of the problems that we, as Americans living in the richest country in the world, um, have our first world problems. So if you really kind of, if you shift your perspective and you think about a lot of what most of the world lives like,
yeah,
where they can't have water, and they don't have a place to, a home, or they don't have a place to, food is always an issue. What I experienced, and maybe what some of your listeners experienced, while sad, challenging, and scary situations are for us, there's people with a lot bigger problems.
sure, sure. Be grateful for what we have. All right.
Yeah, gratitude, definitely.
Jennifer, what are you most excited about going forward in your work? And do you have, are you going to be writing a book?
Oh, I've had a couple people prompt me on that. Never really, yeah, that doesn't appeal to me, but who knows? You never know.
You never know.
The but I'm excited just really to get this message out, because I know there's people out there who have had these kind of experiences, and they're not necessarily shouting from the rooftops, that they've been humiliated, right? When we're
Right.
humiliated, we tend to kind of go inward. But I really am excited about trying to, um, become the recognized source for this type of thing, and helping people get out of it, because I know how debilitating it can be.
Yeah.
I love doing these podcasts, so I hope that, some of your listeners, if they are experiencing this, or if they know someone, they will share this with them. Don't plan on doing a podcast myself, though, so I think I
Okay.
do
No
best on.
competition for me then.
No, I do best on the, the one-on-one, and I do maybe one thing that I have tossed around is kind of doing a group coaching session,
Oh,
where,
yeah.
someone isn't, they're not really paying a premium price, but a lower price, in a group setting where people can learn from each other and heal with
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. That would be interesting. So right now it's just one-on-one.
Yes.
Okay. Jennifer, how can people contact you?
So reputationrepaircoach.com, and that's really the center for all of the information for the download freebie. And for every person that contacts me and is interested in thinking about working with me is offered a free introductory session where we see if it makes sense for us to work together, if I feel like I can help that person. And so that's always free of charge. And I love doing those. I try to leave that person with something, to get them started on their
Yeah.
healing, even if they don't work with me over the long term. I try to give something back. But I have a Facebook page, and I'm trying to kind of get that going, and I am on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
And so,
Okay.
yeah, and my business is Oxygen Coaching, Reputation Repair, but my website is reputationrepaircoach.com.
Okay. So reputationrepaircoach.com would be the place to go.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to include all that information in the podcast notes. Jennifer, I applaud all your efforts, first of all, in your recovery and the fact that you used that negative event as a catalyst to help others going through the pain. I wish you good fortune going forward. It was a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and I know our conversation will help others out there who are listening. Your comments and suggestions to improve the podcast are always welcome. You can email us at itsarapwithrap@gmail.com. The website is itsarapwithrap.com. Our Facebook page is It's a Rap with Rap. We are on YouTube. All the episodes are on YouTube. It's a Rap with Rap, the podcast uncut. We're on Instagram. It's a Rap with Rap podcast. Thanks everyone for listening. Please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap.